Hey, 1% Nation. This is my first interview ever, I think. Yeah, I'm living in Zurich right now. It's 5 p.m. over here. Um, yeah, I'm in mechanical and aeronautical, doing research in thermoacoustic coupling of gas turbine engines. And that can also be applied to rocket engines and all types of engines. My goal is to move into rocket engines. And I'm a whitewater kayaker. That's like what I do. Yeah. Okay. They can't hear you, but they can hear me. Okay.
Hey, 1% Nation, we're going to try this again here today on episode 51 of the 1% Engineer Show, where I bring you my featured guest, Jessica Drusko, who is a mechanical engineer from Canada who has finished up her bachelor's in mechanical engineering at McGill and is now studying abroad at ETH Zurich in Switzerland, where she brings her passion between aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering and is actually on the road to completing her master's thesis. So we're going to talk all about that, if that is a career that you may pursue. She is also the founder and YouTube creator within the channel STEMinine, which is STEM and combined with feminine, where she empowers and encourages young girls, high school age, maybe a little bit older, to pursue a career in STEM. So Jess, why don't you say what's up to 1% Nation and fill us in with any other things about you and what you're all about within your life, kind of with outside of engineering.
Okay. So, hey, 1% Nation. Yeah, I'm Jess. I'm currently in Switzerland doing my master's. My research is in combustion. So, I'm a combustion engineer. My thesis is about thermoacoustic coupling. So we can get more into that if that interests you. It has to do with CFD, computational fluid dynamics, and LES, large eddy simulation. And I did my bachelor's at McGill in Canada in a joint mechanical and aeronautical program. And now I'm just doing mechanical engineering, but I think my thesis topic, it can be applied to both rocket engines, gas turbine engines, all of that stuff. Oh, and I'm a whitewater kayaker.
Nice.
I do international competitions. Yeah.
Nice, nice, nice. So I want to give a shout out to everyone who's in the chat. Absurdus, you, Mohit, I recognize all these guys. Camille, awesome guys. Thanks for being in this. So I still think there's a little issue here with your video. You guys, you haven't seen her move at all, right? I think your video might be frozen, and it's probably on my
Maybe
end.
I'm just
Oh no, I'm seeing something here. I think it's just really slow, but
okay.
I don't know, because I think it's working. I think it's just really slow, guys. So don't worry. This is why you have the value of audio on top of video. So again, Jess, thanks for filling in the little tidbits. Yes, they're saying she's good now. So thank goodness we don't have to restart this another time. So thank you for that little intro. Thank you so much for being here, Jess. And guys, awesome. We got a handful of people in here, some of the biggest fans who are always on this live chat. So thank you so much. Guys, what we're doing here today is I'm going to give Jess the standard interview questions that I like to lay down for a 1% engineer interview, which is how she chose mechanical engineering, how she knew that master's was for her, and we're going to talk all about studying abroad, because that is something that's super cool. I know everyone who I've ever talked to about studying abroad says that it changed their life forever. So I want to bring you guys some value and call on her experience from that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about STEM YouTube and her road to what she's going to be doing with the STEMinine YouTube channel. And then, guys, if you have any questions about what we're saying, I want you to just throw in questions, and I'll be monitoring that, and we can really hear from you guys about what you want to know from Jess's experience. So with that, Jess, are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear everything.
Awesome. So let's get right into it, Jess, and let's go back to the story of you when you were maybe in high school in Canada, somewhere in the Ontario area. And if you didn't grow up in Ontario, let me know.
I did.
Okay, cool. Because I think you know, but I was lucky enough to not study, but to work in British Columbia for 4 years. So That's
Yeah.
a piece of Canada that will forever be in my heart. But Jess, I would love to hear from you because most of 1% Nation is actually trying to figure out if they're in the right major in college or they're about to go into engineering college. It's mostly like younger, and they want to hear from people about how did you know that mechanical engineering was for you, and where did you find that sort of passion between aerospace and mechanical? And let's hear from you about that story, Jess.
Okay, so so the way I chose mechanical or any engineering, I think was I wanted to be a rocket scientist, and that was it because I thought that was super cool. But obviously, I don't know. Growing up, I didn't think I was smart enough or whatever. I don't know why. Maybe it has to do with media or whatever. But I didn't think I was smart enough. And then I sat next to a random guy on an airplane that was a rocket scientist. And he was just like, oh, yeah, it's super easy. You could totally do it. Like me, 16 years old, like, don't know who this guy is, but I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. So I'm going to go do that. But pretty much, yeah, like rocket science, aerospace, I think that all overlaps with many, many different streams of engineering. Obviously, computer science can be rocket science. Um, so can materials, civil engineering, like structures, all of that stuff. But I saw the biggest overlap with mechanical. And I was in high school. I didn't really know what engineering was. I think no one really knows when they're in high school. They're just like, I like physics and math, and that's kind of where I was coming from. So I got into McGill. I went for mechanical engineering. First year, I mean, you do general chemistry, general physics. If anyone hates engineering in their first year, I would 100% suggest you don't drop out until you actually get to second or third year, because that's when you really start to see what your program is about. And then when I actually got into mechanical engineering, like into second and third year, that's when you see dynamics, mechanics, mechatronics. You can do like robotics. And so I chose, like some of my friends went into FEM, which is finite element methods, and other friends went into structures. And I really liked thermodynamics and combustion. So for other people, you can go into thermodynamics from chemical engineering. So it's really like, I think the best way to choose what you do in engineering is like, first you need to be in school, I think. Then you can explore what you like. And then from there, you can decide, okay, I'm going to be a combustion engineer, which, yeah, you can do from mechanical engineering, or structures, which you can do from materials engineering or mechanical engineering, or I think civil engineering. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. Does that answer the question?
No, that's really good. I think that's exactly right. And this is what I encourage a lot of 1% Nation to do, is you have to go out there and explore a field or do informational interviews or talk with professors. And it's really hard to figure out what you want to do before you're actually doing it. So
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I like to quote my dad here, because he says, you don't know what you like until you figure out what you don't like, because you don't feel it in your heart that, you know, it's like, oh, this feels like I'm like belaboring myself through it, or, you know, I don't really feel excited about doing this homework or feel excited about doing this research or whatever. So you kind of have to just like wait till you're there and in the moment, and then figure out if it's the thing for you and follow your heart, right?
Yeah, and like I'm a mechanical engineer and I hate mechanics. Like I hate dynamics and statics and like robotics and like motion of objects. I hate it. I really don't. It doesn't interest me. But thermodynamics and combustion and like a bit of heat transfer, but a lot of computational fluid dynamics, I really like that stuff. And so some people would say, oh, well, is that chemical engineering? But I think really the difference between mechanical and chemical in that sense, just if someone is also has this question, chemical engineering, I think it has to do with the time scales. Like chemical engineering is like electrochemistry, and like the time scales for chemical engineering applications, I think, are slower. Whereas mechanical engineering, for example, I work in gas turbines. and rocket engines, and that's explosives. So that's a faster time scale. So that's where I would draw the line between, like, everything is sort of a blur, but once you get into engineering and you figure out what you don't like, you figure out what you like, then you can decide what to go into.
Yeah, that's really good. So Jess, we actually have some awesome questions for you right off the bat that I think, these guys have actually asked me this stuff before. Des, I really like your question, and then also you has the same question. I've seen this a couple times, but this is a good one. So let's jump right into this question. Because this is like the meat and potatoes of our conversation anyways, which is, you going and studying abroad and having that bravery and sort of knowing that was going to be a fit in your life. And here you are at the end, writing your master's now, or doing the paper, because you've taken all the classes, so you're kind of a little bit more free, and you're at what I call the grand finale. So if you were going to quit and move home, then you would have done it already, right? So you've made it. So the question is, and I've weighed in on this question before, but I think you're the expert here. But some students may feel that there's an opportunity cost of studying abroad, whether that means just for a whole year, or in your case, doing a master's abroad, versus getting more experience. And I think maybe let's put it in the context of, say, like studying abroad for a year versus internships, because in your situation, even if you were doing your master's at, say, University of Toronto, you still wouldn't be able to work. So I don't know if you've been on like a RA situation, but let's really just frame it back to your story and like what, you have some levels of opportunity costs within going and doing your master's abroad, but like when you were weighing all of your options, going out into the workforce or maybe studying in Canada, like what types of variables did you think about? How did you know that this was the right fit for you?
Okay, so that's a very good question. And I have, I think, a very good answer because I had to weigh in on all of the options. So this is the way that I make all of my decisions now in my entire life. So I had the opportunity for my master's to go to McGill, somewhere where I knew the professor, I knew the lab group. I loved the lab group. I loved the research. It was metal powder combustion, so for propulsion, like exactly what I wanted to do. I loved Montreal. I loved the food there, super cheap. I have my friends there. Why wouldn't I stay? My other option was UBC, which you've been to British Columbia. You know how beautiful it is. Mm-hmm. So that's my other option. So moving across the country. And if that's not far enough, my third option was ETH Zurich in Switzerland. So the way I approach all of my the way I make all my decisions now is, so if you look at the McGill option, I knew that was a good choice. Like, I knew I would be happy. I knew I would like the project. But the problem is that I knew exactly where I would be by the end of the 2 years. Like, I knew I would be in Montreal. I would have, hands down, I could see my path. And that to me is the scariest thing ever because I don't see much variation from that path. Whereas moving to Switzerland, I mean, I don't know the country. It's a completely different language. I don't have any friends here. I don't know what the lab group is like. I don't know what the professor is like. I don't even know if I would like my project. Like, I applied to a group that I thought was interesting. I didn't know anything. But the thing with that option is that my life can go in so many different directions. Like, I could meet Prince Harry. Like, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, anything could happen. I could get a job working for ESA, the European Space Agency. I can, there's just so many more options that I couldn't see. And a lot of those options could be very bad, but it's just the risk that I was willing to take. And so the way I approach all of my solutions, all of my decisions is I always take the scariest thing. Maybe that has to do with my whitewater kayaking nature. I hope that answers some of your questions. I don't know if I'm yelling in the mic either.
No, you sound great actually, and I think you are just weighing in on your experience of knowing that it was a risky thing and kind of just being open to that. Like that was really what I could attach myself to in terms of learning from you, going back into those memories and knowing how you knew. But I think that's sort of the uncertainty with all these students is they don't know, right? It's nice to talk to somebody who's been through that and walk us through that mental workflow. So just hearing from your experience, I think, is valuable no matter what, because it's impossible to have a valuable opinion, just like what I'm saying about me, unless you've actually done it, right? So I appreciate those stories. So we have a couple. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, when I got here, I was actually like, being real, I was a little disappointed because I didn't like my lab.
Okay.
But I found another lab and now I love it. Like I found the acoustics for power systems lab and now that's what I'm doing. So yeah, doing thermoacoustic coupling in gas turbine engines and now I love it. But you see, you don't know until you try. Like it's risk versus reward.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is really good. Have a couple more. What do you think? I'm going to get to some more questions here, guys, because I know they've got a handful of people in this chat here, and they're dishing out some awesome questions to use very specifically, which is exactly what I wanted and what I exactly invited. So I'm curious about how you chose McGill and how you chose ETH Zurich, but we're going to take a pause on that moment and think and talk about. Jess, in your, this is your opinion, because lots of people would answer this differently, so I want to know directly from you. In terms of the career that you want to have in mechanical engineering and the fusion of aerospace engineering, do you think it's mandatory for you to be going on this this master's graduate school route? And where would a PhD option fall in there for you? But the core question is this: do you think that for what you want to do in your career, a graduate degree is mandatory?
Very good question. So I would start off by saying it is completely different in North America and Europe. So in Europe, 100% you need a master's. Like, if you want to move here and get a job as an engineer, as a respectful job, you need a master's 100%.
Wow. Okay.
Because in North America, our bachelors are like 4 years. Mine was actually 5 because I did mechanical and aeronautical. In Europe, their bachelor's is just 3 years. Mm-hmm. So they're pretty young when they finish, and companies don't take them seriously. So, but even if you come from North America and it says bachelor, they see it the same. So if you want to work in Europe, so if you want to work for the ESA, for example, you need a master. For what I want to do in particular, actually, it's not even a question of whether I want to do my master or not. Right now, what I'm trying to figure out is if I want to do my PhD or not. So speaking of, I think in terms of 1% Nation, because I think mostly everyone is American. So I think I'll give more examples of like in North America. Mm-hmm. So my friends work for Siemens and for Rolls-Royce, which are 2 gas turbine companies. Mm-hmm. And all of the people that work in the combustion group, they all have PhDs.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, and here in Europe, if you want to work in the combustion group at GE, General Electric, you can have a master's, but if you want to work in the acoustics combustion group, you need a PhD. In Switzerland, in particular, I don't think they're as much worried about hiring someone that's overqualified, because when you have a PhD, they're expected to pay you your higher wages because you're more qualified. I don't think they're as worried about that because in Switzerland they can afford to pay for you. It's a very wealthy country. But it's seen as a huge asset to have a PhD in Switzerland. And I would extend that to the rest of Europe. I have friends from Italy, and they say that like you pretty much cannot get a job in Italy as an engineer without a PhD.
Wow.
But going back to Canada and North America, I have many friends that have gotten jobs right from their bachelor's. Most of them work in engineering consulting. Some of them work for software coding, like mechanical engineers are writing software for banks. Um, so a lot of them are doing tons of different things, but they're not like that exact stream. So for me, I want to work in combustion in either gas turbines or rocket engines. And for that, for sure, you need a master's.
Yeah.
PhD, when you're in there, I would like when you're doing your master's, I would search around and ask the people if they think you should continue and pursue a PhD. I'm every day I change a little bit, but right now I'm thinking I'm going to do a PhD.
Yeah. Wow, this is actually really good. I'm so happy that you said all this because, like, you kind of blew my mind here because in America, for what you're talking about now, I can't speak to doing combustion engineering, guys. You know, this is a field that this is why I have these subject matter experts on the show because I have no idea what Jess is talking about right now. All right, this is like far beyond me. The type of engineering that I do is traffic and connected cities and driverless vehicles and highway design and stuff that is totally on another planet. Even though we are both engineers, but in her field. And in her area where, you know, she's North American, she's Canadian, but she is gaining this expertise and being in, I'm sure you've been in Switzerland for like 2 years now, right?
1 year.
1 year?
But
Okay.
my stepdad is Swiss, so I've been here many times.
Okay. And this falls into a question that someone had, but first of all, I'll finish up my thought. I mean, it's just mind-blowing to me because even if you go to a place like a SpaceX, or
Yeah.
Blue Origin or play like I don't think all those engineers have masters and PhDs. Now some of them do, but I think what you're facing a little bit in Europe is that there is much less barrier to going to university because it's a little bit more like education is a little bit more socially supported, so it's not as expensive. So I think in order to have an advantage towards these more special degree or more special career paths like combustion engineering, in order like they're only looking at masters and PhD candidates, I guess. Like it just seems like it's a slightly different environment where, you know, if you get a PhD in America, it's almost like you're
overqualified.
yeah, you've narrowed yourself so much. So
Yeah.
if you want to be a researcher or a professor, you need it, okay? You need it. But if you want to work in the corporate world, then I don't know. You know, it's kind of like it's a tough conversation. But
Well, pigging back on that, like I said, for my friend that worked at Siemens and Rolls-Royce, if you want to work in that field, like the combustion group of this gas turbine company, you need a PhD, but because your job is so specialized, you have to wait for someone to die or quit, I think. So I think, like, I would personally like to finish my master's, work in a company, move my way up, and then go back and do a PhD later when the company wants me to, like, go from working in the combustion group to the acoustics combustion group. But it's also really hard once you start making money to go back and do a PhD.
yep.
But these are all of the things that you start thinking about once you do a master's. So I think if you want to get a specialized job, you should get a master's. That is my take on it. Like, or I mean, at least for combustion, I would say you definitely need a master's.
Right.
If you want to work in that specific group, yeah.
Right. This is so good, Jess. I'm so happy because a lot of the times I kind of like I know that I don't know what the other person is going to say and I'm going to learn from it, but this is actually an incredible amount of learning that's happening here on my end. So I really appreciate it, and I know that we have about 10 people here live. I know you can't see it, but what happens is even though at any given time there's like 10 live, we'll have anywhere between 100 and 200 different people come and go. So I encourage you guys to stay, keep throwing in these questions. I have a couple more that are directly for you, Jess. So I'm also encouraging you guys. Which of you think that, based on what Jess is saying, got some people talking about being from Singapore? That's awesome. But what do you guys think about this? Do you think that PhD is something that you're considering in your young professional career or student career right now? I'd love to hear a little bit more from you guys. And Jess, back to you. So You mentioned how you have some family in Switzerland, and also how they speak Swiss. They speak an entirely different language. So, do you believe that was something that you considered as a challenge, or something? Maybe looking at some other schools. Like the question from someone, I don't remember who asked it, but they said, "Is it important to go when you're studying abroad to go to a country that speaks your native language, in this sense speaks English?" So, where did that come in on your thinking for a country that speaks Swiss? I don't know how much you speak Swiss, but love to hear from you about that.
So it's a very good question. So I consider myself a world traveler. Like I lived for 2 months in Chile going kayaking. I lived for 2 months in Uganda going kayaking. And I thought moving to Switzerland will be no problem. Like I speak French because I grew up in like a bilingual province. I speak Russian, which I don't know, like I was like, okay, like I have a way with words, I guess, like languages. So I thought, I mean, I've been to Switzerland before. They can all speak English. It shouldn't be a problem. But when I got here, it was actually extremely overwhelming. I am taking German. Ich kann Deutsch sprechen. Nicht so gut, aber so I just said I can speak German. It's not so good, but I can.
Right.
But the problem is that here they don't speak German. They speak Swiss German, which is completely different. People say it's a dialect. Those people have no idea what they're talking about. It is a language. You can't understand a thing. I can speak German. Like I have friends, I go kayaking in Austria, blah blah blah, and I still don't understand the Swiss. But they also don't understand each other because it's like a third is German, a third is French, and a third is Italian. So
That's awesome.
but going back to is it important? I would say don't worry so much about that. It's also, I think, really cool to try to learn a different language. Like, I think going to school in Tokyo would be really cool. I've heard Japanese, like, I don't know, but I've heard Japanese is not so difficult to learn. Going to a new country, even if it's for a year, you can definitely pick up on the language. And also experiencing new cultures, I think, is really important. I would say don't put so much worrying on like, the language of the place, as long as the classes are in English.
Right.
Like no matter how much the class isn't like math heavy, I would not suggest learning turbulent flows in German.
Right, yeah, I can't imagine. Engineering is hard enough. And we got one question from Joseph here, Joseph Armstrong. Thanks again, man, for being in the stream. And I don't know, I can't remember, I recognize you around, Joseph. I know you've been present in some YouTube comments and a live stream or two, but I can't remember exactly where you're from. But it must be from Europe, because his question is, what is more valuable, chartered versus a master's? And I don't really know what he means by chartered, but I'm assuming it's a European thing. I'm going to have you maybe weigh in on that. If you don't know what that means, that's okay. Yeah.
I don't.
So
chartered, that sounds like, is that something in Sweden?
I'm gonna Google it really quick. Chartered education. I don't really know. I'm gonna go ahead and let Joseph, maybe if you're still in the chat, Joseph, why don't you go ahead and expand on that question so that we can help you out. And if he is here. No, not necessarily. That was someone else. Scream says, I'm currently learning 2 of the hardest language for English speakers, which is what? Korean and what other one? Chinese. I know Chinese is pretty hard, but this is really great, Jess, so far. So I want to bring it back, since I really love the way you answer questions. You don't just kind of answer it. You really almost walk us through the story of like the beginnings of your thinking, and then how you're thinking now. What's up, Adriel? Got some key people in this stream. That's what's nice about doing this, is that only the diehard 1% Nation fans come out to the live stream, guys. And I don't even think Joseph, who answered that chartered question, is in here anymore, because I'm looking at the stream and he hasn't asked it. But
yes, 1%.
1% Nation. So Jess, let's go back to, actually, I don't think we've really talked about how you chose McGill, because Canada has a lot of good engineering schools. Clearly Waterloo, clearly Toronto, UBC's okay. I know that the schools in the middle of the country, like University of Saskatchewan and Alberta, has a solid enough engineering. They kind of emphasize more mining and more agricultural-based engineering, the types of stuff that province produces. So I've heard a lot about McGill. I know it's a good school, but I love to hear from people, and I'm kind of collecting this database of hearing from successful engineers about how they chose their school, what was important to them. Let's walk us through that story, Jess.
Okay, so I know in America you guys have like you have your state schools, and then you have your you have Ivy League, and then you have like MIT, which isn't Ivy League, I think, or I don't know, and
You're
Stanford. And you have these like schools with reputation. So the way that Canadian schools work is that they're all like pretty much on the same level. It's really where you want to live. Do you want to because UBC, I don't know, I think maybe that was a misconception. UBC's engineering is very, very good. They also have something called engineering physics, which I don't even want to ever take in my life. It sounds terrible. But I think, U of T and McGill are sort of more renowned, like you hear about them more. But my prof at McGill went to University of Manitoba, did super well, got like some award in thermodynamics in his undergrad, like being #1 in thermodynamics, and then got accepted to do his PhD in Caltech. So
Wow.
it's really not in Canada, it's not really the school you go to, it's what you do with it. So if you get into a school and you have like crappy grades and you don't do like any of the racing teams or the Formula One, or you don't do like any sort of extracurricular, and you don't get an internship and you don't do research, then it's sort of what you make of it yourself. So for me, I applied to Waterloo, which is in Ontario, but it's in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And I didn't want to do that. I applied to U of T, and all these schools I got into. I applied to UBC and I applied to McGill. And in the end, I chose McGill because there's great kayaking.
Right.
There's really great kayaking. Like there's huge rapids on the Lachine Canal. And Montreal is like the #1 city in North America for university life.
Right.
There's like 6 universities, the food is cheap, the rent is cheap, there's like tons of music festivals. So I picked it for that reason, and I stayed because I found a really good lab. The education pretty much in all Canadian universities are the same, so it was good education. And then I took I like made it myself. How do you say that? Like I went in and I made it myself. I'm like my German, all the German words are.
It's okay.
Like I made my path.
Yeah,
there.
you created your own path.
Like,
yeah, you found your own way, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I got an internship so Montreal is also like #3 city for aeronautical engineering in North America.
Wow.
After like, I don't know, after what cities in the States. But so I got like an internship at Pratt & Whitney Canada. They build engines for chartered airplanes. And then I did research at the combustion lab. So it's really just like what you make of it yourself. So I just picked it because it was, Montreal.
Right. This is good. Yeah, I've heard lots about the social life and the amount of activities and international people that come and go in Montreal. Actually, for those of you who are young bucks here, which I think is all of you, Montreal is like the one Canadian destination that guys do bachelor parties in. It's kind of like we see it as like Canada's Vegas. But beyond that, there's so much culture. There's so much diversity. There's apparently good aerospace engineering schools, guys. So I think it's good to look at these other programs abroad, even if you're not going to actually apply, and just see what's going on. But Jess, you really hit a point when you're talking about how you chose McGill, that I talk about a lot, and I want to emphasize this a little bit for 1% Nation, because the 8 of you who are watching live right now, and what's up, Mohit, your question is coming up next. I think her resume is stacked. She's got a good mention here. So You said the school where you go doesn't matter as much, and I call it almost like a brand. Okay, Ivy League is a brand, just like Rolls Royce and Mercedes, and then you have your MITs and your Stanfords, and then you have your good state schools or your provincial schools. But you really, really hit this point that I talk about all the time, that brand doesn't matter as much. It's about what you do with your time at university. Because if you're an MIT student and you got a 3.8 and you never actually built good relationships and did research with professors and you never got internships and you never actually used your time wisely, then the kid who went to just some random school in engineering and killed it networking, killed it with their relationship building with professors and got all this experience, they're the one that's actually going to get more opportunities. They're the one who's probably going to have a stronger path to stardom in their career. So it's not as much about the school that you choose. This is another very common question. Does it matter if I go to Stanford, MIT, Harvard? It's like, no, it actually doesn't, guys. So I'm super happy about that.
And I can actually add to that.
Yeah.
I applied to MIT for my bachelor and I got rejected, and I'm not embarrassed about that at all because now I live in Switzerland and I go to one of the top university in Europe. So I would say do not worry about getting into the top school. It does not matter if you don't do anything with it. Like, you can even get into that school and just party and pass, and like, what was the point of paying that tuition? I don't know. For example, my friend at McGill, he was top of our class, graduated. I think he got the top, like he had a 4.0 for sure. That was on his resume. The only thing. He applied to MIT for his master's and he got rejected. Like, it really matters what you do with your time. He is the smartest person I know, and he got rejected.
Yep.
He only had a 4.0 on his resume.
Yep. I call this valedictorian syndrome, and I've read papers about this. And they find that people who had the best grades and were valedictorians of their high schools, generally what happens is they go on to university and they get really good grades there as well, and they have a higher likelihood of even getting their master's, but they don't crush it in their career because they've never actually, like, they've been naturally good at everything, right? And what valedictorian syndrome means is that, you're good enough to just get good grades in your classes and you can just get by without actually doing that extra stuff, but it's the extra stuff that makes you shine, right? It's that extra stuff on this stacked resume that Mohit knows that you have, Jess. That's the stuff. It's actually things like participating in the Formula One teams and being a president of some engineering club or society, and the relationships that you build with these professors. And the best way to build relationships with professors is to be standing out and doing this stuff. So I'm super happy you mentioned that example.
And can I just add?
Go ahead.
All of those things, that's where you actually also find your passion, which is your number one drive for why you would go that extra mile. So if you work on Formula One, the Formula One cars or the Baja, and you work on it and you like it, then okay, I like electronics, I like cars, blah, blah, blah. You don't really know until you do it. I didn't know combustion until I started blowing stuff up in the lab in the basement of McGill, So if you actually go out and search for those opportunities, you'll be able to find your passion, which will then drive you to do your best.
This is really good. So I'm going to go back to a couple questions. Adriel, if you're still in the stream, give me a little shout out. Adriel gave me, I love him, he gave me like the best testimonial about 1% Nation I could ever get. Really, it made me cry for sure. But his question, even if he's not still on the stream, which I hope he is, I'm going to get to his question, or I'll make sure that he gets the answer from you. Stream's got like a 20-second delay. Yep, he's still here. Great. Okay, boss, I'm about to answer or ask your question. His is, we're going back to the being in a situation where you talked about knowing Russian. You talked about knowing this Swiss German. Clearly, you know English, and also in Eastern Canada, it's kind of important to know French. So his question is this: is learning many languages important for engineering? And before you respond, I actually want to talk about. Actually, we'll hear from you first, but I have a couple examples myself of what I think about this. So, what do you think about that, Jess? Is being bilingual or trilingual valuable or important in engineering in your experience?
That's a tough question. In Canada, if you want to work in Quebec, for sure you have to be able to speak French. So if you want to work at any of those aeronautical companies in Montreal, you have to be able to speak French. That's no doubt, because we have a license in Canada to be an engineer. I don't know how it works in the States. And to get the license in Quebec, you have to speak French. In general, though, so it's different. So at a lot of companies, when I've gone to look for jobs around Switzerland, because I'm looking for options right now, either am I going to do my PhD or a job, and some companies have been telling me you have to speak German, which is kind of a turnoff. And then other companies, like I was speaking to the combustion group at ABB, and I said, do I have to be able to speak German? And he looked at me like, why do you have to speak German? You're doing combustion, which is like, who are you going to be talking to? I'm like, so I think it just depends. I really don't have a good answer for that. For me personally, I want to learn German because I kind of want to live in Switzerland and work here. And so I think, first of all, it's respectful to the country, I think, to learn the language.
Yeah.
Second of all, like also living in the country would be helpful to speak the language. For the work, though, I don't think for the work it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
For yourself as a growing 1% nation engineer, I would say it would be good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But not just to learn a language to learn a language. Like if you're moving somewhere to work, I think
right
would be good.
So
yeah.
this is good.
Okay, what were you gonna say?
No, this is good. Like you're weighing in on how it could be either restrictive or opening up some certification opportunities like in Canada. I love that, and this is also another reason why lots of Canadian politicians are from Quebec, because you have to have the French speaking element. So naturally they have that advantage. But here's my view on this, and we'll go back. I can't remember exactly who asked this question. Was it Adriel? I think it was. Yeah, learning many languages. Adriel. This is what I have found in my experience can be very powerful for dual language or tri-language speaking engineers. And I'll back up and create a precursor. This is not a requirement. It's not necessarily important, but it opens up opportunities if you speak another language. Let me give you a couple examples, and thank you, Jess, for chiming in there, because what happens is this. We live in a global economy, okay? I have lots of engineering friends who work for companies that make their stuff in Mexico or make their stuff in China. And I know several engineers, one who worked for Amazon, who was constantly going to Hong Kong, doing stuff in that part of the world for Amazon, and they don't speak Mandarin, which is the most common form of Chinese. They speak Cantonese there. So her ability to
Cantonese.
her ability to learn Cantonese quite quickly helped her out in her career. Also, my friend who is he's a mechanical engineer. He was super fluent in Spanish. He was Mexican, and he would be sent down to the plants in Mexico, and he would be doing business deals in Mexican or in Spanish for the Mexican partners that they had with their company. And think about the value that you add to this company if they can just put you on a plane, send you to another country, and now you're in the room, maybe even with your bosses who don't speak that native language, and you're facilitating, you're translating, you're driving this meeting. And these people have been able to boost their salaries, double their salaries in their young careers just from knowing another language. So guys, there's this app called,
I completely agree. That is a very good point.
Yeah, it's really cool to see it. And guys, there's this app called Duolingo that I know about as being free, and there's lots of other languages. My heart was broken about how the Philippines native language is not on it, because I think one day I'm going to end up doing a bunch of traveling there. I'm in love with the Philippines.
Can I add another app?
Go ahead. Yeah. Whatever you got.
I did use Duolingo because, but I stopped because I don't like how, I know how to say mom, dad, dog, cat, and you can't really skip levels. And right now I'm using an app called Memrise. So it's Memrize, Memrise, or SE.
Right. Okay.
And it's great because there's like I'm learning German. I learn about 20 words a day, doing it half an hour. It's there's like 6 different levels, and within each level there's 300 words to learn, and you can start at any level you want, and within the level you can do any lesson you want.
Okay.
So like you could do going to the marketplace or going to the cinema or traveling abroad, like what words are important.
Right.
So I really, really like that app.
Okay, this is really good. I'm glad you suggested that. So we have the guy who called out your resume as being stacked, Mohit. He has a question for you about the graduate school application process. He also specifically asked, do you have to take the GRE? I'll go ahead and just fill that in. Yeah, you absolutely do. Maybe European schools use another testing platform. I bet you it's GRE, because I know international school students take the GRE to get into America. So let us know, is the GRE a requirement over there for European schools? And also, I would love to hear about your graduate school application process and your road to being accepted at one of the best engineering schools in Europe. Congrats.
So I was applying for grad schools while finishing my bachelor's thesis, while taking like turbo machinery and some other really tough courses. I was applying to grad schools, emailing professors, and taking the GREs. By the way, I think the most important thing when choosing grad schools is choosing like a good professor that, like, you're not going to know if he's good, but I mean in terms of the research. Like, is this the type of research you want to do? So don't focus so much on the school, focus on the research that comes out of it, and if that matches what you want to do. So I was doing research, different schools all across the world, who's doing this stuff that I want to do, applying to the schools, emailing the professors, and studying for the GREs, doing bachelor's thesis, blah, blah, blah. So in all of that, I did terrible on my GREs. Like, I'm not even going to tell you my grades. I did really bad. I was actually in contact with a professor at Stanford, and we had the similar interests. I had all the criteria he wanted. I sent him all of my application. He said that he used to sit on the board of admissions, and so it shouldn't be a problem. He's like, now we just have to wait for your GRE scores, but that should be no problem. It was a terrible problem. I didn't get into the school. I did really bad on my GREs. I think a lot of the schools in Europe do take GREs, but I think because of all of my other qualifications, I mean, I had a paper that was under review to being published. I had a lot of, I had like my internship at Pratt Whitney. I did Combustion, and I had phenomenal letters of recommendation. I got into this school. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Yeah. Is what I would say. I really wish I did a lot better. I am just not very good at standardized tests. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very grateful that I was accepted to this school. But I think it's also for my other qualifications. So, I mean, life just works out like that. Yep. So you just, honestly, it's just do your best. Do what you're passionate about. Your professors will see that you were passionate about it, that you really like it, that you really want to go for it. Mine did. They wrote me great letters of recommendation, and I got into the school. So, really good. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not really good at GREs, and I couldn't, but still try to study for them. I just didn't work out the way I wanted them to. Well, I'm glad you mentioned all this because I took the GREs, and here was my graduate school story. When I was in my senior year, 2008 happened. Okay, so that was 8.5 years ago. And I was like, oh, smack, this is about to be really bad, this job market. I need to apply to grad school last minute. A bunch of us were applying to grad school last minute. So I did the same thing. I applied, I had no GRE scores, and they were coming in later. And I did pretty okay on the math, terrible on the verbal, I think okay on the essays. But kind of a similar story. It wasn't necessarily my credentials per se. I had a paper as well for undergraduate research and a couple other things, but it was not particularly the stuff I was doing. It was
the relationships I had built through the stuff I was doing. These people were able to influence the decision making at Wisconsin, and I know that my resume was put on the top of the pile because of the relationships I had forged. And even though my GRE, I got like a 400 on the verbal and pretty good on the math, good enough. But I did not have the best GPA, guys. Nowhere close, like not even close to 3.5. I think it was like right on the fringe of 3.0. So it's that other stuff that can carry you into an opportunity. So I'm really glad you mentioned this stuff.
But I do probably need to mention I did have a really good GPA.
Yeah, that's good.
I just did terrible on the GREs.
Yeah. Because sometimes one test, like you said standardized testing not being for you. I think a lot of people can connect to that. So.
But again, back to the GPA. I had a good GPA. Like I mentioned about my friend previously, he only had a good GPA and he didn't get into MIT. So.
Wow, look at this. Connected 1% Nation. We got 2 people from Ireland here. Adriel talks about how he has dual citizenship in France, so we're going to get to that. But I'm going to go back to Joseph's question because Joseph Armstrong is still in here. Thanks for hanging out in the stream, guys. At any given time, there's about 10 of us watching live, Jess. So got a little audience here, not to mention that this will get hundreds of views after it's posted. And I haven't had the heart to tell you yet, but it's because of the distance. But your video has been frozen for a while with your thumbs up from way back in there, so it's okay. No! It's okay. Everyone says that they don't. You look great. Don't be embarrassed because everyone says that they can hear you loud and clear, and that's actually one thing I've learned from video is people will tolerate even lower quality or crappy video as long as people sound fine. They can hear you loud and clear, so you're giving awesome value to 1% Nation. So don't worry. I haven't had the heart to tell you because I'm too afraid to experiment and play with it live because I don't want this stream to die. So let's get back to the questions here, guys. So don't worry, Jess.
Okay.
It's okay. So this is like a podcast now.
Okay.
But they're hearing from you, so it's totally fine. So the chartered versus masters thing. So apparently the chartered element within the UK, that's kind of like the equivalent of getting a PE, I guess. You need like a certain amount of experience and you can only do it after they thought it was like a profile picture. They thought it was intentional. So it's been totally fine. So it seems like the chartered thing in the UK, maybe we'll talk about this offline, Joseph, if I'm getting this wrong, but it seems like that's kind of like getting your PEng in Canada or your PE in America, and it seems like you have to take tests and you need to work for a while after you graduate. So usually, I'm just going to answer this for you. We're not going to talk about this too much because it's not as connected to Jess's experience or the direction of this conversation. But usually, your master's degree counts towards your professional designation. That experience, getting a master's, like in Canada or the States, that the 2-year investment counts as 1 year of professional experience. So you're not necessarily delaying it. It's kind of like, it's just a part of your story. So most people who get their master's degrees, they end up getting that professional designation just a little bit later than they usually would, which is totally fine. And got a couple more questions up here from Adriel and Hector.
I think in Canada it might be...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was saying I think in Canada it might be 1-to-1. Like, I think if you get your master's and it takes 2 years, it counts towards 2 years of professional experience.
It's really good.
But also, it changes by, I guess this isn't really related to everyone because everyone's American, but it depends on which province you're in. Sorry, continue. You'd
be surprised. I think we actually have more Europeans in this live chat right now than Americans. And also, if I look at my YouTube stats all the time, only like 40-something% of my audience is American. 10 Canadian, a whole bunch of Ireland, a whole bunch of Indian. So we do have a bunch of international perspectives in here. Because that's what's nice about YouTube. It's the biggest search engine in the world besides Google itself. So everybody comes to YouTube to answer their questions, solve their engineering problems, and things like that. So I want to get to Adriel's question. Adriel, I do believe you're still in here because you're one of the loyal fans at 1% Nation. And Adriel has this big advantage of having dual Irish and French citizenship. And if you know anything about engineering in France or engineering schools in France, I'd love to maybe pick your brain, Jess, and talk about that, because this is one thing that Adriel can consider for his future.
So I think I know good schools in Toulouse, Lyon, and Paris. Um, I don't know much about which schools, but I have friends that have come from all three of those regions and are now at ETH. So there are good schools and good industry in all three of those areas. So
Mm-hmm.
that's Paris, Lyon, and Toulouse.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, in general, there are very good universities all across Europe and in Paris too. My professor is from France. Um, so yeah,
That's good
I
stuff.
think France would be a good option.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, my fault, Adriel. I know that you're in the Toronto area. I said Irish and French, but that's Des, who's from Ireland, which I hope, Des, we can figure out this blog stuff. He's going to be supporting me with some content type things. So, yeah, thanks for the information about French engineering schools, Jess. We had a couple more questions up here. I'm going to go, I don't have them written down, so I'm going to just go pick these up. Uh, Joseph. He says he's from Northern Ireland, UK. I've never heard of the GRE before. The GRE is basically like the SATs in America for getting into college, or the ACTs for getting into college, but for grad school, it's the graduate requisite exam. So it's sort of like the standardized test to get you into graduate programs. So that's what that is. Um, and then let's see, what does Hector say? He says, yeah, standardized tests are not my strength. They asked about the GRE as well. They're talking about GRE being connected to studying abroad, and you said that a lot of European schools do require the GRE, so I think that's pretty much answering that. And yeah, I think that's most of the questions that are in chat. So I want to talk a little bit. If you guys have any more questions for Jess, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going with my questions because I want to hear a little bit about your research and, you know, how you think that's maybe changed the course of your career in terms of you knowing that you love combustion and it's the right fit for you, and a couple other things about, you know, relationship building and how that's maybe changed the course of your life. But let's talk about your research topic, Jess, and you know, how did you choose, you know, ETH Zurich based on the types of research that you knew you'd be capable of doing for your master's? Were you able to choose it yourself, or were you given a topic? I want to talk about that sort of stuff and how your research has been going so far and everything like this.
Okay, so coming back to how I decided I liked combustion. So basically, I'm like really, because I'm a kayaker. I'm like worried about the environment. I don't know how to say that properly.
No, that's pretty good.
And at McGill, we had this lab called the Alternative Fuels Lab. And what they did was they burnt aluminum and iron powder with no other fuel, so just pure aluminum and pure iron powder, using it as a renewable energy carrier. So I don't really know, like everyone's engineering is a little different in this chat, so I'm just going to try to break it down. Basically, you burn aluminum powder. From that, when you burn it in air, you get aluminum oxide powder and then hot nitrogen, because air is oxygen and nitrogen. So the aluminum oxide powder you collect, the nitrogen hot flows into like a Stirling engine, so a steam engine. And so that was the alternative energy carrier for the purpose of, well, for example, renewable energy, it's connected to a grid. You can't put it in a car. It can't be used in remote areas. So that was the idea from this lab.
Mm-hmm.
So the research from this lab was used for this idea and also for propulsion and a lot of other stuff. So that's what drew me to this lab, alternative energy. But then I stayed with the combustion for blowing up all the different powders.
Yeah.
So then when I was looking for what to do in my master's, I was looking for alternative energy solutions. So the lab I was originally in at ETH Zurich also called renewable energy carriers. But what they were doing is they were reacting, so not burning, they were reacting aluminum powder with water.
Mm-hmm.
So to do the exact same thing, so to get aluminum oxide and then hydrogen. So you would collect the aluminum oxide and then have hydrogen being produced on the spot there instead of storing the hydrogen in a hydrogen fuel cell.
Okay.
So it sounded pretty cool. So I thought, like, does that make any sense? If anyone needs me to clarify,
Yeah, if you guys have any
I
questions
will.
about this type of research, go ahead and drop them in the chat. I mean, this is sounding pretty good for me. I do my best to not try to like weigh in personally on things that are outside of my expertise. So when I hear these types of stories, I just appreciate the niche options that are out there for engineers, and just try to, connect with the fact that you're passionate about this. And I love to just hear about people who are doing cool stuff based on what they love. So that's my appreciation point. So guys, there's still a handful of people in here. If you have any expansion points or questions about doing research in combustion engineering, go ahead and drop them in the chat, and I will forward them along to Jess. But that's pretty good. So you can keep right on going, Jess.
Yeah, so this one was more reacting aluminum powder and water, and they were using membranes, and that was just getting too chemical engineering for me. I really didn't like it. Most of the students were PhD students that in this mechanical group, but they were originally chemical engineers, so there was no explosions. And yeah, I'm a combustion engineer. I needed explosions. So I found this other group that was doing thermoacoustic coupling in gas turbine engines. Went there, talked to the prof, kind of just started in it, really liked it. So it's turbo machinery, gas turbine engines. Basically, what thermoacoustic coupling is, and I'm just going to try to explain this as simply as I can. When you're trying to burn lean, so that means when you're trying to burn less fuel in an engine, you have a lot more hot pockets being formed, a lot less uniform fuel being burnt. Like you're mixing fuel with the air, but it's not so uniform as if you're just going to pump in as much fuel as you can, and then the reaction just proceeds the way it wants. So now you're kind of limiting the reaction. You're just pumping in a bit of fuel. So when you start getting hot pockets in your combustion chamber, so what happens then is you have various amounts of heat release, which is exactly related to different amounts of pressure within the engine. And different amounts of pressure, like pressure fluctuations, give vibrations. So a big problem in rocket engines and in combustion in general is that when you try to burn lean, so burn less fuel, you have huge pulsations and vibrations in the engine, which then crack the engine. So for example, Apollo 11's engine had to be rebuilt. It was rebuilt 3,000 times because back then they didn't do like CFD or anything. But 2,000 of 3,000 times were just to get rid of the thermoacoustic coupling. Because you don't know, like every engine is different, the geometry is different, the operating conditions are different, and you can't, like, there's no linear way to predict these vibrations. So what I'm doing is that I'm using CFD, which is computational fluid dynamics, and I am modeling the flow in the engine and the fire, the combustion in the engine, in order to predict how the engine is going to react at different operating conditions, so that we're partnering with General Electric so that they don't build the engine and then find out they want to go fuel lean and the engine just explodes.
Right. That's crazy.
Yeah.
This is really good. Yeah. So this is just a crazy how this world exists that I basically have no idea about. So it's cool to hear you just kind of talking about all this type of stuff. We have a question another question from Joseph here, who's in the UK. I'm pretty sure. He's thanking you and saying it's really interesting, even though it's not his field as well. But he has a question. Seems to be interested in studying internationally. So let's go back to that for a second. He's an electrical engineer.
Okay.
and he words his question like this, so I think I'm gonna try and reframe it to understand what I think he's getting at. But he says, does anyone know of good things to apply for doing international studying? And I think what he means is, like, for example, let's go back to, if you're a student and you're a freshman or a sophomore and you think you're interested in studying abroad, whether that be for like a whole year or for a master's, what were the resources that maybe you used, Jess? Who are the people that you reached out to at your university? What did you do to gather more knowledge, gather more information about potentially having that be a part of your future?
You mean, about masters?
Mostly about studying abroad, whether that be for doing a whole master's program or for doing it for a year. We would call that studying abroad, I guess. But were there any online communities, or maybe or international career services at McGill, or maybe you reached out to some other people who had done it, or how did you gather more information about studying internationally?
So I was pretty fortunate, I guess, because McGill is an extremely international school. So a lot of people were there on exchange, or they were just in general from a different country. And so you really just get to know all of the different universities. But that being said, I still never heard about ETH Zurich until I started to do research on different labs. So a good way to start would be figure out what you want to do. This is in terms of masters, I guess, not in terms of doing an exchange. If you want to do an exchange, I think there's an office at your university that has partner universities. But in terms of a master's, first find out what you want to do. Go to like the papers on Google Scholar or wherever, and see where those publications are coming from. What universities are pumping out research in that field, and then that's where is a good place to go.
Right.
I would say like figure out where. You could even do it the other way. You can look at a university, start at the university, and then look in their departments, look what their professors are doing research in. So don't just go to university because it's only the research. Like, I would say decide where you want to go, decide what kind of research you want to do, and factor both of those things in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's incredibly true. I would harmonize and echo that exactly. And a lot of engineers have actually said this about how they chose their school, is they chose their school. They didn't let their school choose them. They looked at the professors that they potentially would want to work with, the thought leaders in their niche of engineering that they want to pursue, along with the programs that a certain school offers. For example, we know that Toronto has good structural engineering, and Abby and Fred are enjoying...
Hello?
You still there? I just lost Jess, but it's okay. Maybe I can try and call her back, but probably won't be able to get the stream back. But thanks for being here, guys. I'm not going to cut this out right now. I'm just going to call her back and see if that works, and just get the stream re-going. But we'll see. So thanks again for being here, guys. I'm going to hang out. I'm not going to kill this stream, so you guys can stay. I know there's like 5-6 of you in here, but we'll see. This is part of the issues. She is in Switzerland, and this happened actually. We got disconnected right before I started the original stream. I'm not able to reconnect with her. But guys, I'm still here. There's a couple more people. So friend me on Facebook. I left my Facebook thing in the chat. So I want to connect you guys, especially like Joseph. You're talking with Des. You guys are close in the world, so I want to make sure I can bring you 1% engineers together. And things like that. So make sure you friend me. And if you guys have any more questions, I still see there's 6 of you in here. So go ahead and drop in whatever questions. I love to do a little open Q&A for 1% Nation when I am doing these live streams. So go ahead and ask whatever you guys have. I'm always looking at that chat. I'm going to try to recall her and see if I can get this going again. I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll see. Oh, we got her again. Oh, we got you back, and we didn't lose people on the stream, so it's totally fine. Man, This is always such an experience, is figuring out how to make this whole international interviewing stuff. We actually have more people than when you dropped off now.
It's the like, video still my thumbs up?
Actually, you seem to it seems to have re-triggered you're working now so they can see you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Hector, click on the actual link from my Facebook, and then we'll get you connected. Jess is in there. We can do any follow-up questions for that. But I think where we were going with things is, we were talking about how to choose a school. You chose ETH Zurich based on the types of research. Yay, it's fixed, and your video is working now. So I think what happened was the stream froze at one point, and I was like terrified. I didn't want to like stop and recall. Because once you get, in my experience, what will happen, you get like 10 people active in the chat, and like I don't want to kill the stream, and then we'll lose all them. So you're looking good now. This is always so funny.
Glad.
Guys, we were joking about this offline, but I'm going to look back on this with 1% Nation after doing, 50, 100 live streams or whatever, and laugh at these initial ones, having to like restart because there's no audio or losing people.
Also, guys, give Jake like, I don't know, round of applause or something, like thumbs up, because yeah, he's really working hard to make this happen for you guys. I know he's a little stressed. But
thanks, Jess. I really appreciate that. I was telling her offline, guys, that this stuff brings me anxiety just because, there is just a few people in here live, and I want to bring you guys as much value as possible. And when things don't work, I can like feel my blood pressure like rising. Especially things like what just happened. It's like unbelievable to me that I didn't freak out and like clip it and run away and go like take a nap because I'm so upset. But I was able to reconnect here with Jess, and now your video is actually working. But you had the best still frame. It was like this.
I could just do this in case it cuts out again.
Yeah, there you go. So that was pretty good. You were talking about how you chose the school and weighing in on the international. Thanks, Des. Weighing in on the international element. I'm trying to think. Since there's so many European engineers in this chat right now, why don't you guys take advantage? And I'm gonna ask Jess another question before we get to this. But why don't you guys take advantage of this opportunity? And if you have any specific questions about doing engineering programs in Europe or just picking her brain, using her as a resource right now about any sort of European engineering questions in general, go ahead and drop them into the chat and I'll forward them to her. Besides that, Jess, I want to maybe get into, since you emphasized on your research, so thank you so much for that. I want to talk a little bit about some quick lightning round stuff. If you've had a book that your favorite book, and I don't really want to do like an official lightning round, but I love to ask engineers if they have like a favorite book that helped them when they were in college or any professional development type stuff. So if I had to ask you that, what would that be?
So I wouldn't say it's professional development or it helped me in school, but I think as engineers and also as a kayaker, it's difficult sometimes to stay grounded. Like, we have all these aspirations, like we want to be 1%, top 1%. But I was reading this book, I was kayaking in Norway, and you get carried away, like, oh, I'm going to be an engineer, oh, kayaking, like this isn't real life. But I read this book called 3 Cups of Tea, and it's about a guy that like pretty much gave up his whole life to build a school in Afghanistan for girls in the Taliban region because they're not allowed an education.
Right.
And just reading something like that, it just keeps you grounded. I really like that book. I would recommend it. Just like, I think it's important to also stay like a bit grounded in like what we give out to the world, because I think everything's a balance. You take, but you also have to give back. Mm-hmm. That's how I look at everything. And so I was in Norway, I was kayaking, I was taking a lot. I didn't do anything. I was for a month in van just kayaking. And I'm taking a lot for my education, but I really want to, when I'm educated and I'm out of my master's, we have to make sure we give back. I think that's the important thing, because that's our duty as engineers. Our duty is to make life easier and better for everyone and safer, and that's our duty as engineers. Mm-hmm. And so I think something like that's important.
I really love that. I'm glad you mentioned this. Do you have any mindfulness practices that you fill your daily routine with? Do you meditate or anything like this? Journaling?
I exercise. And I think that's really good. I think people, I think exercise is good just because it gets your endorphins going. And also, I sleep every day at the exact same time and I wake up at the exact same time because I used to have trouble sleeping. And just for me, if you go to bed every day at 11:30, your body gets used to it and you are knocked out instantly. And I love that. I can, like, a lot of people love food. I love food, but I cannot do anything unless I sleep
Yeah.
like 7.5 hours every single day.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said about routine and getting in the cycle and having habitual things where you're going to sleep at the same time, you're waking up at the same time. And I want to ask you this too. Do you exercise at the same time during your routine, however many times you do it per week?
Yes, I do. So because of kayaking, actually recently because of exams, we have exams in August here. There's no summer in Switzerland.
Crazy.
I was doing my thesis, like I'm still doing my thesis, but I had exams in August. And yeah, I mean, it's difficult as an engineer in exam time to keep it up, but it's good to take your break at the gym instead of taking your break at night and watch TV or something. Because if you wake up in the morning and you go to the gym, or you take a steady break and go to the gym, I think it's a lot better. So, but yeah, it is part of my daily routine.
Yeah, it's good.
But also, I'm not like a gym monkey. Like, I do activities at the gym. Like,
yeah.
We have this thing called Super Condi, which is like P90X. But the instructors are like screaming in German in the middle. They're like on a stage on a round podium in the middle, and there's 400 people in the gym.
Wow.
And they're doing like P90X. It's the best.
That's nuts. That's nuts. This is good. I'm gonna come back to the exercise thing because I have a couple things to say here. But really quickly, I didn't realize how important exercise was for everything else in your life until I went through some sort of family struggles and was distancing myself from family, and I was looking for ways to like be a little bit more balanced with like my mental chemistry. And despite having a marathon running mother, it took me going through my own like personal situations to like reconnect with exercise and how it like helps everything, helps you sleep, helps you stay focused, helps everything. So I want to talk more about that in a second, but I have another question here because I'm in the chat encouraging these guys to ask about, not guys, but these people, 89% of my YouTube audience is male, which is like harmonious with engineering, right? But anyway, Joseph, thanks again for another question. Great question. This is actually one that is in my list of questions to make a YouTube video about, because he says, how do you guys balance friendships and friends, relationships, and parties? Which I'm going to again articulate this into a question, which is, a lot of people worry about engineering being so serious that they have no time for social life, no time for parties, and it is one of the top questions that is YouTube. Do engineers party? So, Jess, I would love to hear about your response to this. How was it, when you're at McGill, and how was it for grad school at Zurich, ETH Zurich, and balancing, getting in that kayaking time, making sure you're exercising, making sure you're staying sane and spending time with friends, and did you have time to party as well?
Yeah, so I definitely did party in McGill because it's
Me
Montreal.
too.
I mean, what
Me too, guys. No secret. Go ahead.
But yeah, so for me, a lot of people have trouble with this. A lot of people have trouble. What's the word? Not prioritizing. It's so difficult
management.
Now with all of these languages I'm learning. The word
prioritizing, I think, is important. Balancing time, managing your time.
Yeah, time management, but also when you really want to watch TV or procrastination.
Yeah.
Procrastinate.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
So a lot of my friends in engineering had trouble, procrastination or whatever, time management. My superpower is not procrastination.
Great.
So I knew Friday, like we have this thing called Blues Pub at McGill Engineering, which is basically dollar beers from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. So I was like, Friday, I'm gonna be at Blues Pub no matter what. Like, so I worked hard all week, all weekend, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna keep doing this problem because Friday I'm going to Blues Pub. So it's really just like when you're being hard on yourself. Oh, the words. I don't know the words.
It's okay. Don't worry.
Like holding your ground. I don't know how to say that. Like
It's about self-control, really, right?
self-control.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's my superpower. It's
Good.
really about self-control. You can have a social life. Friends are, for me, family and friends, like number one. If my friend is going through a crisis and I'm in the middle of studying, I will drop that because, like, I think for me, priorities are if they're presenting us something, like, okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow after my exam.
Right.
But also, I think if it's something that's important to them, then it's going to be important for me. But also, if you have your priorities straight and if you have good self-discipline, that's the word, discipline, then you'll have time for social life. You'll have time to go to your version of Blues Pub and for your friends, family.
Yeah.
But it's really about discipline. You would not believe how much time people spend watching TV.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah. Yeah, 100%. And actually, we got a flurry of chat here. People were talking about this discipline topic. I think this is a lot of things that engineering students are trying to learn and trying to figure out in their beginning of their career, because most engineering students, they're so smart and so naturally gifted that high school is pretty easy and they can just crush it, and they didn't really have to utilize self-discipline. If they did their homework for 14 minutes, it was done. If they studied for 43 minutes, it was done. They didn't need to do it. They didn't need to think about it. But now you're actually faced with a much bigger challenge in university. You have to utilize self-control. You have to utilize discipline. You have to prioritize. You have to wake up and study right away at the beginning of the day and not wait, not push that stuff, kick the can down the road. And there's all these little tactics, but an overarching strategy. We'll call it the disciplinarian, being disciplined strategy. And guys, I can't say this enough. I did a video about 9 study tips and hacks for engineers, and I talk all about the stuff that I learned in the book of Habit, The Power of Habit, and how it teaches you.
That's a good book.
So good, so good. It's by Charles Duhigg, and what it is they teach you about self-discipline and being in routines and the triangulation of habit, which you have a cue, which is like a homework assignment, and then you have a result, which is like how you get there, but then it's like the routine that you do, do you go to Blues Pub before doing your homework and procrastinate it, or do you not go until you've done your homework? It's like, what do you do with that routine? And you get in these cycles. And then what happens is once you actually correct yourself, like instead of smoking a cigarette, you run. And then you're rewarded with that feeling of endorphin release instead of the nicotine high. It's like how you get into those cycles. And then what happens is you actually stick in those cycles once you do it. And they call it, where it comes back, tying this back into discipline, they talk about keystone habits. And once you lock in those keystone habits like exercising or eliminating alcohol and tobacco from your life, what happens is you become much stronger at discipline, self-control. You're like working out your self-control muscle, right? So these micro decisions, like your ability to say, okay, I really should not look at my phone game right now. I need to go back to doing homework. Like that little tiny action trickles down and it affects your ability to study. You have like this self-control muscle, guys. So you got to be working that out and training it, no different than you would your physical muscle or your study muscle. So
yeah, no, you really have to train it. But after first and second year, it gets easier to train it. Like exactly like you said, I don't go to Blues Pub until I have this turbo machinery homework done. And that's exactly it. And then I don't want to watch TV because I want to go to Blues Pub, so I work on the turbo machinery homework.
And Des, I see your question here. We want to talk about a very interesting thing that Joseph mentioned, and this is back to that time management and procrastination, discipline type thing. And I love this mention. He says, the time you allow for a task is the time that it takes. And Tim Ferriss, the author of
Yes.
4 Hour Workweek and the recent book, which is called Tools of Titans, he talks all about this. And it's like little mind hacks to trick you about not procrastinating. Because typically if somebody says, okay, I want you to write me, like we'll use Des as an example here. Des says, when do you want me to look at that blog post you sent me? And I know that if I say to Des, whenever you can get to it, right? There's no sense of urgency. There's no scarcity in time. No different than if your professor says at the first week, it says, I'm going to give you this take-home exam, and you guys have to give it to me at the end of the semester. What will most students do? They'll wait till the end of the semester to start, right? This is just natural with humans. Like if we know that we only have 90 more days to live on this earth, you have terminal cancer, what are you going to do? You're going to live like you only have 90 more days. You're going to treat them with such emphasis. But if you think you have this eternity of life, you see what I mean? So I don't know if you have anything to add there, Jess. I don't want to ramble too much here, but
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, so, everything we've been talking about, like social life and blah blah blah, that probably doesn't apply to like around midterms and exams. But you definitely have time in the semester to like see your friends, but you have to, like you said, prioritize. So if I'm going to go to a pub quiz or I'm going to go to a blues pub, and I know that this object is due by Friday, but I have time on Monday, something might pop up on Wednesday or Thursday, or you might get a last minute assignment. So if I have time on Monday, just get it done. Yeah. And then you have like the rest of the work, because you know every Thursday you get 10 problems that you need to solve over the weekend. Do you really want to be working on those 10 problems and also like some other stuff, like the thing that you were supposed to have done on Friday? Like, you know you're going to have to start studying for this one exam. So just pre-plan. No, like you always have way more work than you think you do, because all of that work is going to show up out of nowhere. So it's better like right when the prof gives it to you, set yourself a deadline. If you have nothing to do that day, just get it done, out of the way, go to blues pub, have fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is great. I love that. So really quickly, Jess, I want to honor your time as well, because we're hitting the 90-minute mark, and we've been kind of chatting together for like 2 hours, because we started this a little late. So Jess, I'm going to say if you have anything that you need to do, because it's about 7 p.m. there for you, or whatever, 6, 7, 8 p.m., she's over in Switzerland, guys. I know a couple of you are coming in from Northern Ireland, UK areas. So if you need to go, Jess, at any given time from here on out, just let me know. And
okay, I actually don't have anything planned. I planned for this.
Sounds good. So we'll just keep answering some questions, and we got 7, 8, 9 people who are live at any given time, maybe even as much as 10. So we'll keep going for a little bit here, guys, maybe another 30 minutes max, and then we'll chop it. So keep your questions coming, because we got a couple more mentions of some things. But this is really good, all that stuff that you just mentioned, rounding out the procrastination, make yourself do it type stuff, Jess. And Adriel mentioned something really interesting here. He says, the way I fight procrastination is by putting myself in a room with no distractions, so TV, cell phone, computer, and I just study. And this is really good. And this gets back to the same triangulation type thing, cue, routine, result. And what you're doing, Adriel, is you've recognized that in order to not fall into that bad habit loop of looking at your phone too much, watching TV, you have removed the ability for that cue to even happen, right? You've taken your phone away. You're not in the room with your TV. And this book talks all about like Alcoholics Anonymous or other type things. And that's what AA teaches you, is that if you want to stop drinking, if you want to stop partying, and stop hanging out with people who go to the bar, stop hanging out with people who don't don't finish their homework before going to a blues pub and things like that. So if you figure out what these cues are that create the bad habit, take them out of your story altogether. So I love that. And there was another question. Yeah. Go ahead, Jess. And then I
was going to say sometimes it's hard because all my work is on my laptop, for example. But what I found really helped me in terms of procrastination is that I could only concentrate really hard, which I want to concentrate really hard the whole time because I want to get it done as fast as possible. I can only concentrate really hard for about 30 minutes, and then I take a 2-minute cell phone break. 2-minute YouTube, 2-minute cell phone, 2-minute anything, and then I go back to concentrating super, super hard for 30 minutes. So I don't know if that will help anyone. Because you don't want to just be half working and then take way longer than you need to.
Yeah.
And then take a 20-minute break in 2 hours.
Right.
Or like a 30-minute, or, so
Jess,
that helps me.
Yeah, I love that. Jess, do you know about the Pomodoro technique?
No.
That's actually pretty much what you're doing with your cell phone break. The Pomodoro technique uses a bunch of research, and it comes down to productivity and time management. But what this technique is effectively what you figured out for yourself. They encourage, and you're supposed to find the amount of time that works for you, but they find that 25 minutes works for most people. You do 25 on, 5-minute break. And you even are supposed to use a timer or your cell phone for a timer. 25 on, 5-minute break. That's when you check that phone. That's when you use YouTube. And then you do 4 sessions of that, so like a 2-hour study period. And then you do your more thorough break. That's when you would go to the gym, watch that full Netflix episode, do like a 30-minute break. And then you just keep doing that for your whole study day or whatever. So I'm happy that you mentioned this. And
the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Exactly. It's like the self-control muscle, just getting the repetition muscle. So, Des, I'm pretty sure you're still here because Des is one of the biggest fans. Oh, he's definitely still here. He says he's still here.
Yes, Des!
Des is awesome. So, says, since colleges, this is getting back to sort of like it's a college and getting ready for professional world question. He says, since colleges in Europe have shorter curriculums, sometimes like 3 years for a bachelor's, do we believe that European engineers looking for work in the U.S. or Canada will need to do further study to do the PE exam? My upfront question, I think I have a good answer for this, Jess. I'm going to let you lead because you're cross-internet, or you're European and you're specifically Canadian type expertise or knowledge. I think that's a good resource here for this.
Yeah, so from what I've seen, because I have a lot of friends in the masters now that are doing internships in the States and stuff like that, I would say that they don't really recognize, America doesn't really, I don't see that they recognize that the students have less of an education, and I don't think in Europe they recognize that we have more years of education. But also in Europe, no one really stays with the bachelor. Everyone gets a master's.
That's like interesting to me.
So I would say that like there isn't really anyone from Europe that goes to the US with just a bachelor's to get an engineering job. I haven't heard anyone. I don't know if that. What were you going to say, Jake?
No, that's pretty much exactly right. For example, the 4-year requirement after you get your bachelor's, that's going to vary based on where you are in the world. But it always starts with they compartmentalize. Like, for example, if you have a bachelor's, they don't really care how long it took for you to get it. They don't care if you went to community college before you got it. As long as you have that bachelor's, now your professional road begins, okay? So if you were able to take as many classes, like if you came into university with like all these AP credits and you were able to do university in America with just 2 years, they're never even going to see that. They're just going to see that you have your bachelor's and now you need this experience. So it pretty much harmonizes exactly with what you were saying, Jess. Okay, a couple more mentions here. I really like what Hector's... Can you still hear me, Jess?
Yeah.
We're all good here. I really like Hector's mention going back to like the productivity type stuff and you kind of figuring out your own Pomodoro technique, Jess. He says he uses this app called Forest. I like this. In the app, what's going on is it's planting a tree for an hour, which is like work, study, do your homework, and then you take a 5-minute break. So it's the same type of thing. And I know that Pomodoro enthusiasts, some of them go as far as like 45 minutes to 60 minutes before taking that break. So it's just another cool addition to that. Hector says he's really loving the stream. And not getting... So thanks again, Jess. I'm really appreciating all your insights here.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, and guys, keep the questions going because we're going to keep the stream going for just another 15 or 20 minutes before we say bye. But I do have a couple more of these. I call them lightning round, but you don't have to treat it like lightning round, Jess. I'm curious for you to weigh in on this question here for 1% Nation. I would love to hear something that, like, not necessarily a mistake, but something that was either a big learning curve for you, or we can use that as a mistake. But if you had to be a STEM mentor today, which you are with the STEMinine platform that you're building, and you had to maybe provide one insight, one example, one story about a mistake you have made either as an engineering student or a master's student over here in Switzerland, what would that mistake be, and how can 1% Nation learn from that experience?
Okay, so it's not one mistake, but it was sort of the way I was approaching my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is in high school and in the beginning of my bachelor's, I was super stressed about everything in my life. Like, just looking forward, like, my GREs suck, I don't know if I'm going to have the good grades. Like, what if I can't find a job? Like, just stress, worrying, am I going to fail this class? Don't worry about failing the class. Concentrate on passing it and don't worry about the rest. The way I approach everything in life now is do your best because there's literally nothing else you can do. Like, you can do your best and you can't do more than that.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't. So I do my best and I don't worry about anything else. I do my best and I'm nice to people. Like, I think it's super important. Be good to people because, like, just be good to people and do your best. And that's all you can do. And I think even if you don't do well or whatever, if you're not satisfied, you'll be satisfied that you're still a good person and that you did your best and that you're not a mean.
Yeah. No.
Does that make sense?
No,
so for me,
yeah, go ahead.
That's what changed. Yeah. Is that I just stopped worrying about what if I can't, and I just do my best.
That's really good. And actually, I can relate to this because in a lot of the business books I read, it's all about making sure that you are being awesome first in terms of your family and your... I'm looking for a book here on my bookshelf called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And
I also know that book.
Yeah, a lot of this book actually hones in on what you're talking about. It's about, like, being working on your pillars of character first. Like, if you want your team to be trustworthy, then you need to be trustworthy first. And you need to be awesome. You need to be an empowering leader. If you want your team to believe in and follow you, then you need to give them some rope. And you need to just show them that they have the ability to speak up. They have the ability to be awesome. So the first thing I thought of when you were talking about you working on, it's kind of like personal development to push professional development higher, right? So this is really good. So Amkar, I'm going to give you a shout out in the chat. It seems like you're just joining us, so thank you. Amkar, if you're still here, go ahead and mention it because I don't want to ask your question if you've left already. But this is really good. I'm going to get on to one other quick question. If you had to go back into your life and think about all the mentors that you had or the professors that you connected with or maybe even a family member, what would you say, Jess, is the biggest single piece of advice you've ever received in your entire life?
Oh.
Tough one, right? And you can think about it if you want.
I think...
Go ahead, yeah.
I mean, it's not... this is the best advice that I've ever gotten from my mom. And it's actually a quote from someone. If we Google it, we can find out who it is. But it has to go back with the stress thing. She always asks me, Jess, how do you eat an elephant? So, Jake, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time. I know this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is the only thing you can do. And I used to worry, I still worry. It's hard not to worry. You're doing your thesis, you have your exams, you have a social life, you have your family. I have to make sure I call my mom. I have to make sure, you have all of this stuff. And, you can only do as much as you can do. So that is the single piece of advice that she always tells me and that I always tell other people. And I always try to remind myself, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time.
I love that. I'm so happy you mentioned this. And it does tie directly into what you're talking about with discipline and time management, because it's okay, how do I finish up this project? How do I study for this exam? Well, I need to prioritize exactly what are the most important things first and just do a little bit at a time, 1 hour at a time, study. And I love that elephant analogy because a lot of people get intimidated by that. They're like, well, first I'll cut it up. It's like, no. It's like...
Yeah. I've heard that a lot. I'm like, yes, you would cut it up into bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we got a new ad here who I don't recognize you. So Amkar, shout out to you for being in this chat. I do lots of live streams and release, besides yesterday, release 3 videos a week for engineering success. I missed Saturday's video. For everybody, for the 151% engineers who are in the Facebook group, I very sadly admitted that there's not going to be a video yesterday because I was working on this TEDx project that I was up till 4 a.m., which was going to be showed to 30 people at 9 a.m. So I was wrapping that up. But anyway, I release 3 videos a week about engineering
Shameless
success.
self-promotion.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I uploaded video Saturday morning.
Nice.
So you can look at mine.
Nice. You guys should go check out Jess's channel. She runs a YouTube channel called STEMinine, and it's kind of like STEM merging with feminine, and she's trying to empower young people, not just women in engineering. I think her core target audience is that, but she's a YouTuber as well, for those of you who didn't hear the intros. But I know you can't see it, Jess, but on the live stream I have your YouTube and your YouTube STEMinine thing right there, so they know how to find you, and I'll put it in the description. But we got a question by Amkar here, and it's kind of a more general success question, because I don't think he has found the 1% Engineer show before, because I talk a lot about all this types of stuff. So Amkar, this is you can really go down a black hole in my channel about this, which I would encourage you to do. But I'm gonna have you just weigh right in on this, Jess. He says, what other skills would you think are like the top ones for you to be working on to be successful as an engineer? And you can just, right from your experience and your personal views, just weigh in on that.
I would say number 1 is patience. I would like to say, well, my experimental research was really good. Now my computational research is good. And in both experimental, or if anyone's ever done experimental research, you need a lot of patience. Now I'm doing computational research. I send my simulations off to a supercomputer. It takes like 24 hours to compute. You get it back. It's completely not what you wanted, and you have to restart. So as an engineer, I would say patience. Even as an engineer, you're going to be working with people. And so that's number 1, I would say. Mm-hmm. And then number 2 is, not to like stress and worry about what everyone else is doing and what you should be doing and like looking into the future and worrying about all this other stuff. It's just constant, like find your passion and then do your best to give all you've got to that passion. Mm-hmm. So, it would be finding a passion within your engineering, like what you love. I love combustion, and I want to give everything I've got in that. So also, like my goal, I guess, eventually, I haven't said any of this, but it's like to become an astronaut. Because, so I don't know if anyone saw, but the recent female Canadian that was selected as an astronaut, she went to McGill. She worked in the same lab as I did, and now she just finished her PhD in Cambridge doing experimental combustion. So she's pretty much like, we did the exact same thing, and I'm like, okay, this is it. This is my moment. If she can do it, like in 4 years, I'm going to apply too. Mm-hmm. That actually has nothing to do with what he was saying, but I just mean be patient and do as much as you can. Don't worry about the rest in what you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is good. Yeah, I think what I would weigh in on is how you started this, and you said, I got a thank you from some people about your answer. They like it. So I liked how you started this, and what happens with a lot of young people, especially with 1% Nation, because these are your you're standouts already. They know that they're going to have the world at their fingertips. So what happens is they worry about like, oh, like they're still in high school, right? And they're like, so which school should I get my PhD? And I'm like, you have lots of time to decide. It's like, make sure that you're doing your best today, and that you have a plan for the next month or 2 or 3, and that you're following this macro plan. You know when you need to apply to schools, or if you're in college, you know you need to start applying to jobs a year or 18 months early. But like, there's no way for you to control the future. There's no way that anything you do today, microscopically can truly impact anything beyond a year from now. So like, don't worry too much about that. Just make sure that you're sticking to your plan, and that each day you're studying, each day you're working hard, and each day you're following your passion, to bring it back to what Jess is talking about, and that it feels good that you're going down the right path. Because if you wake up and you're just like not excited about your life and what you're doing today, then you just may be on the wrong path, right? So you kind of have to keep evaluating, be present. It's like the mindfulness, be present in that day. So this is good stuff.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And actually, no, just piggying back on that and like sort of incorporating everything I've been saying. If you're in high school and you're trying to figure out what university you should go for your PhD, you don't even know, first of all, not even if engineering is for you, but especially you don't even know what your passion is within engineering. Engineering is so broad. Me and Jake don't even know what each other's field is. Like, I have no idea about like traffic control, and Jake said he has no idea about combustion. So it's like, you don't even know what your passion is. Maybe your passion will be about consulting, which you don't need a PhD for at all. Mm-hmm. So like Jake was just saying, reiterating what I was saying, you have to be mindful about if this is your passion and if you like it. So don't think too far ahead. Be present and really think about it. Is this what you like? Is this what you love? Is this what you want to do? Yes, now move forward.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's so funny joking about how we don't know what the other one does at all, which is true. Honestly, guys, even within civil engineering, which civil engineering doesn't get too crazy, but you could put 50 different civil engineers in a room and not necessarily be able to know what the other ones are doing, because you have like soil and coastal and environmental, and then foundations, and even like if you're doing structures, some people may do buildings, some people may do bridge foundations. Like, it's you don't know where you're going to end up. So
yeah, and on Thursday, for example, I interviewed a girl in mechanical engineering, same program as me, and she's doing robotics, and she's building like robots for Disney research, like autonomous robots for Disney research. Wow. And I have no idea about like robotics and computer science. So that's just how broad, that's just mechanical engineering too. Yeah.
That's awesome. So really quickly, I'm going to try and we can do this for almost 10 more minutes, but we're going to be wrapping this up really pretty soon here, guys. But a couple more questions. Des has an interesting question. Love you, Des. You're awesome. I'm gonna start with Jess, and then I'll have a little bit of mention here. But maybe you can think about, Jess, any of your friends, your engineering friends back in the McGill days, or any of your European engineering contacts that you know. Do you know anybody who's working at either like a tech startup or I don't know, Des, if you mean by tech startup, if you mean one of the big tech companies. I mean, if you're saying startup, that's probably a startup, but do you know of any engineers in your network, or any people, any friends who are working in like a startup environment, Jess?
I do. I know one of my friends, he just graduated from Cornell, I think. Mm-hmm. But it depends on what the question is. Yeah,
so good. I'm glad that you mentioned this. Cornell is an Ivy League, so that's up in Ithaca, New York. Great school. So what he's inquiring about is if he's interested in working for a startup, what types of skills or what types of things do you think are more important on his resume while he's in college? What would a startup culture value in terms of experience and resume? Maybe you can add some stuff to that, Jess.
Okay, so I would say two really good things. One is that in a startup, people, you need to be able to do a lot of stuff, and you need to be able to think on your feet and so they're going to be looking for someone with a lot of skills. They don't have the manpower to be able to hire a lot of different people from all the different fields. So you might be coding one day, and then you might also be like, I don't know, trying to get feedback from people and trying to like incorporate data. And then you might also be trying to go to pitch meetings. So you have to be able to, you have to be social too. Like, I just mean that you have to have many, many different skills. And then the second thing would be you have to be able, you have to show, I guess, in your interview that you're the type of person that goes along with change. I don't know if I phrased that properly, but in a startup field, it's always changing.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem in a lot of big firms is that there are people that like the way that things are done and they do not like change.
Mm-hmm.
And companies love if you're a person that can change because that is an asset to them. Like, newspapers, as you saw, now everything's online, and all of the journalists that are willing to go to write on blogs, they're the ones that are still around.
Yep.
And so that's just the first example I could think of. But
Mm-hmm.
in the startup world, I would say, yeah, being able to be malleable. I don't know if that's an English word.
It is. Good word.
What would you say, Jake?
No, that's really good. I think what you're talking about in terms of a startup, they want people who are dynamic. They want people who can adjust, because what a startup is trying to do is they're trying to be disruptive. They're trying to figure out what is exactly going on in their field that they're focusing on and see how they can always be ahead of the curve and implementing some new technology. You know, the journalist example, the first journalist who started a blog, they're still alive today and they're not dead. Or the photographers who started using Instagram 6 years ago when it first came out. What do you think happened to their career versus somebody who said, oh, I'm not getting on this Instagram thing, you know? So you have to be ready for change. It's always coming. There's always some new thing. And another thing that I would like to add to this, all of my friends who have worked at startups or big tech companies that treat their teams like startups, like even like a Facebook or a Microsoft, these tech companies that have survived, like a lot of people thought Facebook was going to die even after it went public, it went on the stock market. But they have to treat themselves like a startup. For example, Facebook always buying these companies, buying Oculus, buying WhatsApp. They're interested in people who are so ambitious and are so interested in changing their own world around them that typically a lot of people who are like building their own things, starting their own business in college, or like I know a guy who started Badger Bites in Madison, Wisconsin, that is now... they changed the name of the company now. What is it called? I can't remember, but that's a memory moment. But anyway, they're looking for people who are like doing all the above and beyond stuff, not only being dynamic and knowing everything and having this multifaceted skill set, but the people who are like building their own platforms. Like I know coders who like make their own forums for their specific area of passion, or like for example, if for you, Jess, you know, they were looking for somebody who like built a kayaking community online, some digital thing, and that's the person who would get hired for this startup, because it's like, wow, they're just capable of doing something. If they wanted to like add it into their team, into the startup culture, if I ask this person to do this, they know you're capable of actually implementing it, and you can actually like deploy those skills. Can you actually do it? Like in startup culture, everybody thinks that it's a good idea. Ideas are actually super worthless, guys. It's can you take an idea and make it happen? That's what a lot of these startups are looking for. So that's what I would add to that. Got a couple more questions here. I'm very, very aware of your time though, Jess, and I don't want to pull you in too far here down the 1% Engineer Nation black hole.
They can also always, like, you have my Twitter handle there, and I have an email attached to my my YouTube channel and my Instagram.
Stream. I have all three of those in the stream right now. The Twitter.
And I try to answer every question people send me. And also, yeah, I'd love to make more friends.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure. I think you're in the Facebook group. You definitely are. So I can connect you with all these people. I'm gonna give a shout out to those who are in here. We got a couple more questions here, and we can almost do these in lightning fashion here, Jess. Is it better to work for a big company when you're starting a career, or maybe like a smaller company? Joseph asked from the UK.
I would say a bigger company for me because I'm interested in moving up, and there's a lot more opportunity. Like for example, like I'm afraid in smaller companies, I'm really afraid of getting stuck doing the same thing forever. And in a bigger company, there's a lot more room to grow. And companies will even send you to do a PhD if they want you in a higher position, or they'll send you to do an MBA if you're really committed to that company. Um, in a startup, it's different because you're investing everything you can to grow that company.
Hmm.
But I just mean in terms of small companies and big companies.
Right.
So, and also here it's difficult because the small companies all speak German, whereas the big companies are worldwide. And so there's a lot more opportunity to travel, and there's a lot more, like, you don't have to speak German.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I love that. It's really
Mhm.
good. Um, let's see here. Yeah, just a couple more mentions. Des, I'm glad you mentioned the startup of medical software company. Angel's talking about his woodworking startup, which is really good. I would call that woodworking small business. The term startup, guys, this I see this term very loosely being thrown around a lot. What a startup means is that you're a small business that you're working on something new that has never been done before. And if you can actually make a microscopic success for it, let's use Facebook as an example. They made Facebook very successful at Harvard. And then they expanded it to just the Ivy Leagues. And then they expanded it to just American colleges. And then they expanded it to Canadian and Mexican colleges. And then international colleges. And then eventually the world. But that's what startup means, is that you have the ability to do something so different and so disruptive that you can scale it really fast. And it can become a huge company. For example, woodworking. In order for that to be the case for your woodworking startup, you would have to like be the first person to build like a LinkedIn for the woodworking world, connecting businesses with woodworking suppliers and woodworking advocates who can be on this platform. That's an example of a startup. But if you're just making woodworking stuff and putting it on the internet and selling it like that, like using the term startup is kind of it's not really the right term. But maybe you are. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you are building something that is like a YouTube exclusively for woodworkers. I don't know. But these opportunities exist in the world. But with that being said, I don't want this to go too much further. Chris, thanks for your question. I'm just going to go ahead and answer that. How important is calculus in mechanical engineering? Well, there's plenty of calculus in the program. I don't know how much calculus you've used during your master's, Jess, or anything. Maybe you can just kind of add some.
Yeah, so because I'm in turbulent flows, which is, I don't know if you're still in calculus, you probably don't know what the Navier-Stokes equations are.
It gives me
They
heart attack.
they model all fluid motion pretty much, and like I think like 90% of the computers on the planet are trying to solve them, but they're not, you can't. Um, there is my stream is very, very, very math intensive. That is again because I am in turbulent flows and combustion. Um, Other streams of mechanical engineering are less math heavy. I don't know much about like the other streams. Like I know, for example, mechanics. Like you have equations in a lot of mechanical engineering, and you do have to be able to derive and integrate, or at least have an intuition for what those are. But like for materials or like, I'm not really sure. For my stream particularly, my stream is very math heavy,
Mm-hmm.
like turbulent flows.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the one thing that like in fluid mechanics messed me up. All the calculus that's involved in that. So we're hitting the 2 hour mark on the stream here, guys. So we're gonna say goodbye. So with that, Jess from STEMinine, I have a couple final questions for you, but I would like for you to provide in 1% Nation, the people who are live here, one final word of wisdom, piece of guidance, one final little takeaway that you would advise in order to be successful, maybe for those who want to study abroad, maybe for those who want to pursue a niche thing like combustion engineering. And then I have your YouTube linked in the stream, your Twitter and your Instagram. So maybe if you want to mention a website that you have or an email, but go ahead and give us that final takeaway, final lesson from you, how 1% Nation can get in touch with you besides Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then we'll say goodbye. Go ahead.
Okay. So the number one advice like I've been saying, like find your passion, work on that, and don't worry about the rest. But also, seriously, you like really be nice to people because no one is going to hire someone that they hate.
Mm-hmm.
No one is going to hire someone if they don't like working with you, if you can't work with people. Like I'm not really good at group projects, but I'm nice to people and people like me. So I think really the number one thing, doesn't matter how smart you are, if you come across as a jerk in the interview, no one's going to hire you. So that would be my like thing for success. Like be good to people and people will want to have your back.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing, can I just quickly explain what my YouTube is about?
Go ahead.
Okay, so pretty much I'm just trying to like lighten the mood in engineering. So right now I have a whole bunch of interviews with super awesome badass girls. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
It's okay.
Really cool girls on my YouTube. But also I'm thinking about sort of just like blowing stuff up I don't know how feasible that would be, but like my latest video, I just wrote a script and I shot it and it's actually like what engineering is really like. And everyone's been telling me it's really funny. So if you guys can watch it and tell me if it's funny and tell me if you actually think that this is something I should do, please let me know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to like connect younger people in high school and show them how cool engineering could be. So less of like a success, like what to do with engineering success, and more be like, hey guys, we're all suffering together. Let's laugh about it.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. And then, you can connect with me on YouTube. I have an email address there, STEMineblog@gmail.com. Both my Twitter and my Instagram handle are STEMinine blog. STEMinine, STEM, and then in like feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the 1% Nation Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you guys have any more questions, I'm in Switzerland. I'm just doing my master's thesis, so my evenings are free. I promise you, you will get there eventually. You just gotta make it through your bachelor's. Like, it gets better, right, Jake?
Mm-hmm. Awesome stuff, yeah. And before we say bye, do you know about the YouTube channel that's called Backyard Science?
Do they do explosives?
They blow stuff up, yeah. You should check those guys out. It's a lot of stuff.
Okay, I will.
They like put pipe bombs in fish tanks and then use slow motion cameras. So like it's crazy. So go ahead and check out Jess's channel.
Damn it.
It's okay. No, you can do it in your own way because they're really big, which means there's a way for you to niche that down and do something that's very specific to you. So don't worry. All the ideas are not taken in the world. So guys, go ahead and check out Jess's platform. Connect with her in the 1% Nation Facebook group. Everybody who's been in this chat, I've been encouraging them to friend me on Facebook. Most of them are. Des already is. Adriel already is. Mohit already is. There's a couple people who are core. I call them keystone members of 1% Nation. So go ahead and check out Jess's stuff. The STEMinine YouTube channel, STEMinine vlog, Instagram and Twitter, and fire over a little email to her. I'm going to mention that in the Facebook group and in the description for those of you who are joining us. Thanks, Hector. Friend me on Facebook if you haven't yet. There's my Facebook. But let's say bye, guys. Thank you so much, Jess, for using your background, your experience, and your insights to support 1% Nation. I think it's so awesome what you're doing, studying abroad in Switzerland and following this combustion engineering passion. I have never heard of combustion engineering before meeting you, but you have enlightened me today. So thank you so much for being a part of 1% Nation. We'll check you later.
Of course, and thank you for having me.
No problem. Bye, guys.
Bye.